Okay, so hello and welcome to this episode of Grief Unedited. This is a space where we have honest and real conversations about grief and loss. I'm your host, Karen Lafferty, and I'm an accredited counsellor specialising in grief, and I've worked with people for over a decade, helping them to navigate their journey through loss. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and both of those are at Continuum Counselling, or my website is continuumcounselling.com. The podcast that we are recording today is just purely for educational purposes, and it's important to note that the views that I express within it are my own, and they don't represent any of the third parties that I work either with or on behalf of. And lastly, before we dive into today's episode, I always think it's really important to do just a bit of a content warning because, as I say, these conversations are real, they're unedited, we don't work to a script of any sort. So please use your discretion when you're listening. And if you find anything that we're talking about today triggering or distressing, that's okay. Just allow yourself to step back from the episode. And if you want to pick it up in the future, then you know that you're more than welcome to. I would always encourage that you listen to your own internal wisdom when it comes to this sort of content. So, yeah, do what feels right for you and keep yourself safe. Now, today's episode is called The Long Goodbye, Grief and Terminal Illness, and I am delighted to have the lovely Julia Jack with me today as my guest. And in a wee moment, I'm going to hand over to Julia and let you just introduce yourself to us, Julia. But today's episode obviously does talk, and we're going to talk quite a lot about your experience of kind of living alongside someone with terminal illness. And I think this is going to be such an important conversation because I suppose often I find that grief isn't really recognised as being something that people would necessarily experience, from that stance of diagnosis. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a really helpful conversation for people. But before we go any further, yeah, can you introduce yourself, Julia? Tell us a wee bit about you and what you do.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much. God, even just saying the long goodbye was just like, oh,
Mm,
had a wee memory jolt there. So I've had quite a varied kind of career, but I suppose over the last sort of 20 odd years, I've been an actor, doing various stuff and lots of jobs around that. I've worked loads in events, done lots of different things. Funny, my name is Jack. It's Jack of all trades, quite literally as well. So I got what do you want me to explain a bit more or about how I got to this point or
yeah, go for it. Tell us a bit about you. Yeah.
so I guess I guess the reason I'm here was because of my dad.
Yeah.
In 2019 he got diagnosed with throat cancer and he had an operation, radiotherapy, quite intense radiotherapy, and that was that. And then we were going into 2020,
No.
and that was, the pandemic. So it was March, I think March. So no, what happened was he got back into hospital, and it was awful. He got like delirium as soon as he got admitted back in. He got admitted back in to try and start swallowing because he wasn't eating after getting this
No.
intensive radiotherapy in his neck. He was on like a feeding tube. And as soon as he got admitted, he got delirium, and it was I'd never heard of it. I heard of the
Mm,
word delirium, but never actually known it as a medical condition. And it was awful. Like he was, didn't recognise him at all. He didn't recognise me at points, and he kept trying to leave, and it was just very like distressing.
traumatic, yeah.
Uh, but then, luckily, we actually nearly lost him a few times. He got an emergency tracheostomy. It's like so many things happened. We were
Yeah.
told twice that he's not going to make it. So you imagine like preparing yourself for that. You're like, and then he made it. It's like, my God. So he was finally, so lockdown, I can't remember, 20th, something like that, or
Mm.
20th of March. He got out of hospital like a few days before. I mean, we are so lucky that he got home. At that point, they hadn't done any scans or anything, so we didn't really know anything further at this point. And then it wasn't until July 2020 they got another scan and they picked up that it had spread to his chest, and they were like, "That was nothing else we can do." Basically, that was pretty much what his consultant said. And my dad, being my dad, he was just like, "Oh, how long have I got?" And like, taking it all in these strides, and you know, So that was, I guess, the beginning of like living with someone with a terminal illness. And lots of things happened since then, but I guess that was kind of the backstory of what kind of prompted me to start studying mindfulness meditation, as it were.
Can you remember, Julia, like what were those early days like? Because I'm just struck by like I suppose how quickly things changed over that period of time, but also like, yeah, how did you start to make sense of that? Because that must have been a hell of a lot to try and get your head around if it's been, I heard you saying there's a few occasions where you get that phone call to say
Yeah,
actually he's not going to make it.
yeah, it was bloody awful. Sorry, it's okay. So I
Mhm.
just swear, I apologise.
No,
Um,
please.
so, and ironically, we found out it was my mum and dad's 50th wedding anniversary, and we had the appointment at the hospital on my mum's. Sorry, no, it wasn't. It was 1st of July. It was my mum's birthday. That we got the diagnosis. So I'll never forget it. Do you know?
Mm,
And I was with my dad every step of the way. I'm self-employed, freelance, so I have that kind of luxury of time, kind of between jobs and whatnot. So I was able to be with my dad quite a lot, my mum and my dad quite a lot, to take him to appointments and be available. It was tough, and I have to say I was drinking far too much wine. That was my coping mechanism at the time.
mhm,
Um, for I guess the sort of the first 6 months, and then also it was the pandemic. So when my dad got out of hospital and just before the pandemic, I moved in with my son just to help because my mum could have coped. So I was at my mum and dad's, and luckily I was there, and I've never been so happy to be self-employed because
yeah,
all my work
yeah.
disappeared. So I'd no work. So I was, again, I reflecting back, I actually feel really lucky that I had that extra time because if I'd been working, I wouldn't have seen him.
Mm,
But yeah, it was difficult. I couldn't cope because everything that you do, you're like, is that the last time? Birthdays, events, anything, and you just don't know how to play it, and you need to. Well, you want to be strong for them. Subsequently, my dad was kind of forgetting things. I don't know if it was
mm,
because of his medication that he was on or everything he'd been through, or whether
mm,
it was actually early onset dementia. I'm not sure. In a good way, he kept forgetting, but in
right.
a bad way, he was like, because we were trying to tell him, Dad, you can't go in the bus up to the supermarket. You can't do this. You can't. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
There's loads of people on that bus. You can't, you're vulnerable. You can't, you know what I mean? And from going from being a very independent man to not being able to do very much is heartbreaking, you
Mm,
know.
mhm,
So the early times, but you know what? I think my mum suffered more than me. My mum's been married to my dad forever. It was their 50th wedding anniversary that year as well in the August. So I found out in July, and that was the August. So it was kind of like, yeah, it's pretty devastating.
yeah.
So I guess that kind of went on for about 6 months, the drinking and trying to cope. And I'd always kind of used Headspace app
Mm,
and a little bit of
mhm,
mindfulness. And I've always done yoga and dabbled a bit of been in retreats and whatever, quite a kind of earthy, I suppose, spiritual person when I wasn't self-sabotaging in some way or another. So I'd been using the Headspace app probably for about 8 years. I started using it when I was pregnant, and then it was good, and it really helped. But I got to the point where I was like, I need something else, or I'm gonna go mad. And I knew that
mm,
I had to be there for my mum and my dad and my son, of course. So I'd heard of John Kabat-Zinn, who you'll know, Karen, but who, for anybody that doesn't know, he's a doctor, and he created an 8-week course called Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction, written loads of books, loads of mindfulness courses and whatnot. But this is a course that he created for people dealing with chronic stress and maybe weren't like coping well with medication and whatnot. Anyway, it's been around since 76, is that right?
mhm,
70s.
mhm,
Amazing course. Found out about it, and I knew there's a company called Mindful Leader. that I found it on, and they were doing an 8-week course online. The guy, my teacher, is based in New York. People coming from all around the world. I was very skeptical, but at this point, I was like, you know, I need something, either that it's therapy or, you know, just to kind of cope with it. Constant anxiety, I think, is another. You can't switch off from it because you know it's going to happen. You know, when that's just in your mind all the time. So gosh, I'm so grateful I had the opportunity to do that course, because for me it was life changing in the best way. You know, like, I think probably been quite anxious all my life, never felt totally content or settled. You know, either I've lived in 4 different countries, I've done loads of different jobs, you know, and like never, I really struggled with that. And I'm sure lots of people feel that, you know, just maybe not totally happy, or as happy as I could be, or discontent. I think that's the best way to describe it. But also being in the performing arts industry, you know, you're in and out of work all the time. You know, there's a constant anxiety about where your next job's coming from and why you didn't get that job, and, you know, comparison, all that. So did the 8-week course, 2021, March, February to April 2021, and it was just amazing, life changing. It was 8 weeks online, 30 folk from around the world, guided by a brilliant teacher, and it's just real practical skills as well. You know, there is a lot of instruction and reflection, but like the basic tools that you take away with you are life changing. You know, and I would strongly encourage anybody to try meditating. I couldn't do it in the beginning, but it's all guided, so you have to kind of not worry about not being able to do it, because it's also a skill like anything else, you know, and you don't need to be perfect at it. It's something you can go back to as a beginner every single day. So that was the start of my sort of mindfulness journey, I suppose, which has been incredible.
I'm smiling, Julia, because I suppose what people wouldn't necessarily know about our conversation is that I had no idea that this was something that you did, were really invested in, and obviously it's something that's a big part of my practice, and obviously teach mindfulness as well. And I'm smiling thinking at the kind of the random nature of how you and I connected over this episode, and then it was that moment of going, ah, right, so you do this and I do that, and you know, I think mindfulness is just such a powerful, powerful tool. And when you said about being really skeptical, like I do the mindfulness-based living course and run it quite often, and I always find that at the start of it, people have got this real sense of like curiosity is what I usually kind of bring it down to. It's like a curiosity about like, I don't know if this is for me, I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'll give it a whirl. And then somewhere around about the middle of the course, you see that change in people where it's like, ah, right, okay, so this is what mindfulness is, and this is what it feels like, and this is how my body responds when I'm, you know, feeling grounded, feeling settled. So, yeah, I just think it's absolutely magical what it can bring to people when they're just open, curious to it.
100% agree, Karen, because what I realised, it's everything is inside you. You know, we create so much shit, basically, that's not necessary. But, you know, someone who, do you know, because on our course, there was a woman who was 70, and there was people younger than me, you know, at early 20s. So, you know, and you can see it's like, but it's trying to, because your mindset obviously is very important, but someone who's 65 might have quite a fixed mindset. I mean, great that they were on the course, but like, it's going to have to take a wee bit more time to, but it's so, as you said, that's why the word I use is powerful.
Yeah.
And I think people are like, oh, mindfulness, what is that meditation? It can be quite a sort of esoteric kind of phrase, or people don't
Bit
quite
more.
understand what it is, and because it's quite kind of, can be quite vague, I suppose. But it's definitely a way of life for me now. So after I did the course, I was able to do a 5-day retreat online with Brown's University, because I wanted to start the teacher training. So I've done the first part of the teacher training in mindfulness-based stress reduction. I'm hoping to start the second part this year, potentially in October. It's quite an intensive course for the next bit. I'm quite happy for it to kind of, they do say take a bit of time to I think it takes a while to ingrain it into your body, you
Yeah.
know. You can do your 8 weeks and you'll feel the amazing benefits of that, but I think to teach it, you need to have time to develop your skills and whatnot. But so
I think I was on that pathway for about 3 years actually. I'm just thinking like when did this start and when did I finish it? But I think it would be about close to 3 years actually between like starting the level one teacher training and then actually coming out the other
amazing.
side as qualified. So
I know. When I first thought about it, I was like, that's not for a long time. I've done a degree, I've done 4 years. It's like I really want to do, but this is like that. This is for life. It's
yeah,
not.
you live it. Yep.
Hopefully, it'll end up being a full-time job at some
Mm.
point. But it's changed for the better, and I know it's affected me in such a positive way, and then hopefully giving back. So, but it was incredible, life-changing.
Did you find, I'm curious about like I suppose I'm mindful that within mindfulness often we talk about the idea of like acceptance of what is. So trying to kind of look at life situations just as they are without judgment or without, trying to put any layers of perception onto it. But did you find that that acceptance part of mindfulness was useful then in the journey you were on with your dad? Like did that change things for you when that kind of
Yeah.
landed? Yeah.
Definitely. I think, as I said earlier, I was always thinking about what, because you don't know what's going to happen, and it's
Mm,
quite hard to get answers sometimes because quite a curious person as well. It's like I wanted to know what was going to happen. Someone's going to die, right? How are they going to be feeling? At what point are they going to deteriorate? Obviously, everyone's different, and they
mm,
they, they can give you answers. So you're like, when you don't have all those answers, you have to be able to make peace with it. And I think just by meditating every day, it helped me stop feeling so anxious and needing to know absolutely every detail. And I think being more present for my dad,
mm.
and my mum, and just helping out where I could and being there. But it definitely helped. It helped stop the chatter
Yeah.
in your brain. That's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah.
It's because it stops you thinking constantly, constantly, constantly about the future and just being more in the moment, dealing with the day-to-day stuff, because there was a lot to deal with. He had medication to take every few hours. He had like this feeding tube and all the rest of it, So rather than worrying too much, because they said 12 to 18 months, and he
Gosh,
had
yeah,
that,
that's what they
but
gave
we
me.
knew it could go at any time. But like, he was okay for probably 6, 8 months, and then you started to notice. But but yeah, grateful.
Mm. It's not, I'm struck that that's probably not a word that people would necessarily be thinking you were about to say there when you said
Mhm.
that,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I know. It's a weird thing that's come out of seeing somebody at the worst state in their life. But it puts life into perspective, and just being able to be there. I think
mm,
time, listening to someone, given time is like all those things are like they mean so much more than and we're all caught up in a rat race of a life, and
yeah.
and and maybe it's been a wee bit older as well. Would I felt the same way if I was 20? I don't know, probably not. Maybe getting older is a blessing,
Mm,
anyway. Because I've had like my grand died when I was 20. I was very close to my gran. I think I felt a bit depressed like then, maybe for 2 or 3 months. Went to speak to the doctor about it. As soon as I spoke to the doctor, felt fine. I didn't want medication or anything. I was like, no, I think just needed to speak to someone, you
yeah.
know. And I think we're very fortunate nowadays that you know, we have access to a lot more like people and things, you know, companies, coaches, counselling, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Although I'm sure it's still not as accessible for a lot of people that need it,
Mm,
So that's why I think that I really gravitated towards the mindfulness-based stress reduction, because I feel like once you've done this course, you can continue your own journey yourself. Whether people do it or not is up to them, but you've been given an opportunity, you've been given the skills. Now you can take it forward,
yeah.
into your own life. You don't need to be a teacher, just like can be life changing.
I think that's a really important part of it. That again, if people aren't maybe familiar with the idea of like 8 week interventions, whether it's stress reduction, the cognitive
Yeah.
therapy model, the mindfulness based living course that I teach, like I think that's the beauty of them. It's like 8 weeks of work together as a group. Sometimes it's a wee bit longer than eight. I don't know if it's the same with the stress reduction course, but in the mindfulness based living course, we tend to do like a there's like an introductory meeting initially just to let people get a feel of what the course is and whether it might be for them. And then there's also potentially a day retreat in amongst it as well. So your 8 weeks is kind of more like
Uh-huh.
10 weeks realistically. But hopefully by the end of that, people are leaving with really good command of the practices that we've taught. It gives people an opportunity to like, yeah, live it in their life for a period of time and see kind of how it feels for them as well. Because it's not just about sitting on a mat for 20 minutes every day or half an hour every day, isn't it? No, it's about those like I love the kind of more informal practices of like can we just be more present moment to moment rather than, worrying about, oh God, I've not sat and done my 20 minutes of meditation today, but
Yeah.
I might have been
Yeah.
able to have a conversation in a more mindful way. I might have been able to, sit down and really enjoy my coffee this morning and pay it full attention or,
Yeah,
things like that.
exactly.
That's
Your cat or whatever,
yeah.
it's um
Yeah.
just, I think I said to you before, like we just did this really powerful exercise um in the course, and I've now actually started the actors for mindfulness for actors sessions. I've done a
Amazing.
few with the acting students at Motherwell College, and I'm hoping to kind of roll that out and go and speak with a lot more students and anybody really. But one of the exercises I've incorporated in this is like, so you sit with someone face to face, and you one person talks, one person doesn't speak, doesn't tries not to react too much because you're nodding and you're agreeing with me.
Yeah.
So try and get them to not like do
Not do what I'm doing.
any reactions and just let the person talk for 5 minutes, because when do you even get a chance to talk for 5 minutes when without being interrupted or
Mm.
so it's a weird exercise, but it was like it's really powerful, and it just feels like, oh my goodness, you've given me 5 minutes your time, 5 minutes of your time, and it's really powerful. Just you just really feel heard, you
Mm.
know so but
Beautiful.
it's a good one to try because people
Yeah.
are like either like trying to get their own thing out or like, oh my god, yeah, so you did that, but I remember I did this, and so it's little things like that,
Mm.
that really stuck with me. Just hearing lots of nice poems and getting lots of nice guidance and just expanding your mind, and reframing things, and yeah, it's
Mm.
just it's wonderful, so that, and plus a few other things throughout.
I was going to ask you what else
Yeah,
what else was in your kind of toolkit or what else helped you navigate that period of
I
time?
was lucky. It was just luck, timing maybe, or what, I don't know. So there's a company in Edinburgh called the Scottish Book Trust, and they do wonderful work. They're a charity, and they also do this program in conjunction with Macmillan,
Oh, okay. Hmm.
and it was doing like, I think it was primarily aimed at people who were directly affected with cancer, but because it was my dad, they were say, yeah, absolutely, you're welcome. So we had to kind of write a story and make a short film almost of
Wow.
any way that we wanted, whether it was with like moving images or pictures, whatever you wanted, and then we came together and well, we just did it online because it was still during the pandemic, but and that was incredible, because it's not only so I'm kind of centered it around my son, who was only like, he was born in 2016, so he was quite young at the
I was
time.
going to say, so he was
But
really little when this was all going on then, yeah.
yeah, and my dad was just, he totally changed when he saw Ivor. Like, it was like
Mm,
lights up a room. Kids have that effect on their grandparents.
amazing.
Um, so yeah, I made it about them. Again, that was meeting once a week for I think 6 weeks or something like that, and just the people that were hosting it were just incredible. So I've got like, it's like a little short thing where I've got some video, some voiceover, like pictures of Ivor and my dad, so
Oh,
it's a keepsake for me,
hmm.
and it's just a really beautiful, it's like a memory, memory book. So that was nice, and that was, and also I think just being in that space and listening to other people's experiences Like I think there was one other guy whose wife had passed, but everyone else had been directly affected by cancer.
Mm.
So it was really nice to be in amongst a group of people who were understood and were going
Got it.
through
Yeah.
similar things. It's funny that you don't actually realize there's so much going on in the world until you're directly affected by something.
Mm.
But it was such an incredible group, really, across the board. Someone was up in Shetland, someone was in Ayr, so people from all over.
Amazing.
It's life affirming,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people coming together and supporting each other. It's incredible.
I think there's
So,
always something so powerful when people are able to share stories in amongst people who like just get it, And I was wondering, like from your experience, did the people round about you, did your friends get it? Did they understand what you were going through? Did they, yeah, were they?
that's funny you say that, because sometimes you think it will be the people that are your long-term pals or the
Yeah,
closest
and
ones
it's
to you that will be rallying around, but it wasn't.
no,
Do you know?
no.
Like,
Hmm.
it was the pandemic, of course. Some people did check in a little bit, but I found, like, I was at the hospital a lot. I was chatting to nurses, I was chatting to other people. Sometimes someone would phone up to speak to my dad, and it was this nurse. She was actually in Ireland, and she was just kind of checking in, and I ended up having a great conversation with her. And she was telling me about her mum who had passed of cancer, and it was her it told me that, saying the long goodbye, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you're so right, it
Mm-hmm.
is. But yeah, yeah. So no, I didn't feel a huge amount of support. I think weirdly, one of my best friends, well, a few really close friends, her dad had died really suddenly, like I think about 4 months before mine. So she was checking in quite a lot. And
Mm.
then all of a sudden, kind of expecting my dad to die. He was the kind of focus. And then all of a sudden, her dad took a heart attack and died. Like,
God. Mm-hmm.
I know, really, really unusual. And then my dad's brother also died before him, randomly.
Mm.
He actually died on a nudist beach in Spain.
And there's a story.
I know that's another story, but that's hilarious. But we were expecting my dad to go before it. I know it's just funny. I just think, like, it's funny you come out the world into the world naked and you come back out the world
You left it on a beach in Spain, yep.
naked. Worst places to die, I suppose.
Yeah. Hmm.
So
I think that
yes,
thing you said though about like the expectation of who's going to be part of your journey and then who isn't is something like I hear that often and I've never quite been able to work out why that is. Like, is it just that the people that were already in your world don't get it, don't have the right experience to get it, do you know? Or I do I certainly hear that often that it's new relationships, it's random people that come into your world that
Mhm.
suddenly become quite pivotal in that kind of grief journey. So yeah, don't know what that is.
I don't know whether people just don't know how to talk about it if they've not
Mm,
been through it.
okay. Hmm.
Um, One of my friends had lost her mum though, so yeah. But I guess everyone's getting on with their own lives as well, And I just don't know if some people are just better at chatting about the stuff. I love chatting about this now, and although it was a really terrible time in my life, I've gained so much from it. So I love talking about it, but I think it's really important, and I don't have any
Mm-hmm.
issues talking about it. And this is why your podcast is so amazing, and talking about subjects that we should all be talking about, whether you've gone through it or not, because it is, something that's going to happen to us all, or something that's going to happen to your parents, but I guess some people don't have either the tools to talk about it, or they just don't want to talk about it. So,
Have you got learning though from that experience of not being supported in the way that you might have wanted to? So I'm sitting here thinking if somebody's listening to this episode today and they're in the position that you were in, they're living with a family member, they've got that kind of terminal diagnosis that's looming, they maybe don't have support around them as such, like What would you say to them if you get a sense of what might have helped you if you could go back like a couple of years
Oh,
and redo this?
I don't know. I don't know if I would. I mean, it was obviously mad because it was a pandemic, so no one was really going out
Yeah.
chatting. But I would definitely say just ask someone if you can go and talk to them, whether
Mm,
it's a pal or not. Like you could even say, look, you don't need to say anything. You don't need to give me advice. I just need to talk. You know,
mm.
it's not always easy to say, but some people I think maybe feel the need to respond with stuff, and it's hard if you haven't gone through it or you don't know what's going on. But just being listened to is like really, what's the word? Powerful, I suppose.
Yeah.
But reach out to all. Macmillan were great. You know, Maggie's can't. You know, I'm sure all these things gets offered to you anyway, but take them
Mm.
up on it because they're the ones that are trained listeners, and you know they know what to say and they have a better idea of what's going to happen or whatever. Definitely utilize all the services that are offered to you,
Yeah.
and look online. I mean, like on YouTube and all sorts. There's John Kabat-Zinn, I'm sure, has a myriad of um pods, what do you call them, meditations and
Yeah, free stuff that can like people could tap into.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, loads of books. I definitely want to compile a list of things, but I think sometimes it's quite hard to read a book. And I think with what we've done is like it's really about embodying it, isn't it? And
Mm.
probably easier when it's spoken to you. But as I said, YouTube, but you could get lost down a rabbit hole, couldn't you? Because there's so much online. So
I
you could be like,
sometimes find as well though, like the grief experience, I sometimes end up talking about like that head and heart split that we have, where it's like people know logically what they need. They know what helps them, but actually
mm,
like because their body becomes so often like dysregulated and overwhelmed by the emotions of grief that
yeah,
picking up the phone to say to somebody I need to talk can feel impossible. We go into that place of thinking that nobody cares or
uh-huh.
nobody gets it. So,
Mm,
maybe this is more advice for friends of somebody who's going through what you've journeyed
mm,
through to say, just turn up in their doorstep, take them in a coffee, just invite them out for a
yeah,
walk or something, even if they don't want to talk about what they're living through, but just so that they
absolutely.
know you're there for them.
That's great advice. I think people maybe feel uncomfortable about
Mm,
doing things like that, or nervous, or scared, or whatever. But like just extending that like little lifeline is more is exactly what they need. Or if it is just sending them a card or
yeah,
something to let them know that you're thinking about them. I think something like no contact, like it kind of
yeah,
speaks volumes. And that's your own fault if you feel uncomfortable about it. It's not about you, it's about your friend or your relative,
yeah,
what I mean. So I think get over yourself and just do it.
yeah.
Easier said than done sometimes though. But ironically, again, that my dad had passed in the 2020, oh my god, 2021, was it 2021, December. And then one of my friends, her mum died really quickly of cancer the following January, and I was able to be there for her.
Mm,
We're just messaging, just giving her space, and I felt grateful, and she was really grateful that I was
nice.
keeping in touch with her. So you can't be too hard on someone because they don't know what to say. Like I
No.
think, going through that lived experience, obviously, you're. The thing is, everybody's going to be different as well. Like my brother's a paramedic. He's very matter of fact about things.
Mm.
He doesn't overthink things. He doesn't. I have more things on my shoulders, I think, than him. Or I think a lot more about it. You just gotta go on with it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
a lot of people are like that, and you can't change them as well.
Yeah.
That's another great thing about the mindfulness. Just need to add this in. It's like about trying to change someone as well. Like you can't change people at all. Like
Yeah.
I think from certain aspects about my mum or whatever, and trying to encourage her not to do this or not to do that, and like it just ends up in arguments quite a lot.
Mm.
So during that time, I realised I had to just shut my mouth and take a step back and leave her to get on with things. And it was her life, and she had to do. If she wants to do what she wants to do, that's fine. But that's another life lesson as
Yeah,
well. It's very
absolutely. Gosh, yeah.
hard though when you see someone not treating themselves as well as they could, and you, excuse me, you think you know what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's ultimately it's their life and you have to let them go on with it.
I find sometimes as well situations like that, there's a lesson in it for us as well, isn't there? Because it's like holding a mirror up because there's something in us that's reacting to how that other person's behaving. So as much as there's a bit that's like we just want to change them, I
Uh-huh.
sometimes find if we can turn it about and be like, well, what is it about me that's making me think that I know better? Do you know, what is it about me that makes me think that I've got the answer that they don't have? Because I think sometimes
Yeah,
that's where that frustration comes, isn't it? It's like, why are they not getting it?
other daughter as well. Maybe
Mm.
that she doesn't have the same relationship with my son. Weirdly, my son. Sorry, her
That's
son.
unreal.
So yeah,
Mm.
odd.
The joys of relationships, huh?
I know family dynamics.
How would if people because as I say I was conscious coming into this conversation to Julie that I think sometimes grief isn't necessarily recognised at the point of diagnosis, and I find sometimes part of the work I'll do with people when I'm meeting with them is that validation piece of like, yes, it's grief, and it's absolutely normal that it's grief. And I think sometimes when people like yourself are able and I suppose courageous enough to speak about your experience, then my hope is that somebody out there listening will have that wee kind of light bulb moment of like, okay, that's what's going on. That's why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. And I suppose I'm just curious if anybody's been listening today and really found this helpful or, really resonated with your story, is there a good way for them to get in touch with you? How would they do that?
Yeah, so I'm in the early stages of starting a business called Space Seekers,
Space
and
Seekers.
the plan uh, is to have a workshop that I deliver, and it's mindfulness, meditation, a little bit of yoga, and just all round nice stuff. Basically, a wee bit of journaling. So I'm on Instagram, Space Seekers UK, and yeah, that's probably the best way to get in touch with me at the moment. I'm still in the early stages of getting all those bits and bobs sorted, but Space Seekers UK on Instagram would be first point of contact
I'll
at the
bet you
minute.
a fiver that by the time we release this episode, you'll be up and flying.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Mm.
I, yeah, early days, but I was visiting the acting students and the musical theatre students at Motherwell College a few weeks ago, and that was incredible. I know probably actors and whatnot are quite kind of open and receptive to the kind of stuff they did, but in reality, it's for everybody, anybody that is willing to just like, come in with no judgment and just let go, let someone else guide them for an hour and a half. And there's some group work and there's some pair work, and we have a little bit of reflection and a little bit of journaling and writing a wee letter to yourself and just a little bit of stretching. Um, it just got some really lovely feedback
Amazing.
because we did a meditation, and it was like a 20-minute meditation. They were like, oh my god, it felt like 5 minutes. And then another guy was like, oh, I could actually notice all the aches and pains in my body. So he's like, I
Mm.
normally notice them. He said, I normally just, so it's just giving yourself a gift of an hour and a half, just to, and that's all can be tailored to any company or whatever. This is just something I've put together for acting students at the moment. But I've done a yoga course, and I've done the mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher training, and there's a course with breathworks. Maybe heard
Mm.
of it. Mindfulness for stress. Did the 8-week course for that, and then I also did. I'm really interested in working with children as well. So I did a course that's aimed at 7 to 11-year-olds. It's by a company called Mindfulness in Schools Project, which is great, a great charity. So it's just trying to get into schools as well. That's needs to do a bit of like paperwork around that to try and
Mm.
get into schools. But I'm keen to work with people across the board because it's for everybody. It's not for anybody. It's not for people with working in a corporate company. It's not for people that don't have money. It's for absolutely everybody, you know. So, and if people could get access to this, and I think especially children from a young age, you know, my son is on the waiting list to get tested for ADHD. So I know if there was like potential, it's harder as a mum to teach your kids things. I think, you know, they would rather listen to somebody else, you know. I do some like some breathing with him, but he's always like that. And he takes the Mickey out of me. He's like, you know, like just do slow breaths, and he does the opposite because he thinks he's being funny. So I think even if children could be exposed to it at school,
Yeah,
not take it
totally.
on board till later on, but I wish I'd had access to this at a younger age, probably would have shaped my life differently, you know. But yeah, at any age, no matter what age, you know, it's gonna benefit you for
Shout
sure.
out to our listeners then, if anybody's listening today and they've got links to schools and they think they could be doing a wee workshop, then yep, Julia's your woman. Get in contact.
Definitely. It's
Yeah.
good stuff.
Listen, thank you so much for this conversation today, Julia. I know that I said to you obviously earlier on that usually what we'll do at the end of our episodes is link to any social media presence you've got, so we'll get your details and get them onto the show notes for today's session. So if anybody's listening and they do want to look up Julia's contact details, then we'll get them listed in the show notes. And I think the last thing I would say, and this is always my kind of parting bid to people, is that if anybody's been listening today and has either found the episode itself useful or might have listened to a few episodes now and be subscribed to it, then please do think about sharing it, leave us a review. I think as a small business, and obviously the podcast isn't something we ever make any money out of. So yeah, any traction that we can get from people who are listening and finding it helpful is always greatly appreciated. So it just remains for me to say thank you one final time, Julia, for your conversation today. And thank you to the people listening as well. I always love going back and having a listen to the podcast once they're out live and seeing what people's comments are as well. So yeah, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, thank you for sharing your story with us. And thank you to anybody who's been listening along on today's journey.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you for your podcast on this subject. It's critical and very useful. Thank you so
It's been my
much.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.